Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to No Judgment here with Tish Ross, the podcast. I welcome you in. You better grab your tissues. And I know that a lot of people that I know that have been regular subscribers and regular viewers of my podcast have said this is the Crying Network, TCN, because the shows, the guests that I have come in and they are real and raw. And I'm so thankful for that. Just as my guest and I were just chatting, we need more of the real and raw so that people can really see what God can do in your life and in the lives of others, how he can transform you if you just surrender, And that will come, it will come and his timing, but in your timing as well. You got to let go. And that's what this story is all about. Yes, it's going to be hard to hear. We're going to hear a story of abuse. Like I said, as a 3-year-old in the description, if you can imagine, and it happens all the time, everywhere. Unfortunately, children are beaten, they're abused, they're neglected. But even on the other side of that, not only are we children being beaten and abused and neglected, but they're learning from that. They're watching you, they're learning from you. And sometimes those traits can be passed on. We learn, we watch as children, we see, we store those memories, and then sometimes they come out in our adulthood. So how do you come out of it? Do you stick in it? Do you stay at the bottom of the barrel? It's okay to be there for a little bit, but you don't want to stay there. And we're about to find out. You'll have to tune in next week to find out how my guest Charles climbed his way out and how he has stayed so positive. But I want to welcome everybody in. If you have comments or questions, I already see you guys coming in. If you have comments and questions for Coach Chuck, put them in the comments. I will do my very best to get to them, but we've got a lot to discuss, so I'm going to bring him in. Hello, Coach Chuck. Welcome.
Hey, I'm not on the islands. I'm in Indiana, but I still go with my aloha.
Well, aloha to you. Thank you so much for being here. I know that you and I have chatted and we have a lot to discuss, and I appreciate your vulnerability. There are not very many men, at least that I've had on my show. I've had a few men. I have, but I have had more women than men, and I appreciate your bravery, your vulnerability, your ability to be raw and transparent and real and honest. And I thank you because, like you had shared in one of our messages earlier, I think you said, I think this is really needed. And I absolutely agree. And before we get started, I just want to put out the disclaimer that we are not doctors, we're not psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, we're just regular, everyday people. And Coach Chuck has agreed to come on and share his testimony. So I want to ask you first to tell us a little bit about yourself. And how did you get the name Coach Chuck, Charles?
Well, I am Charles Gary Prinzen Jr., aka Coach Chuck. I'm currently living in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with my beautiful wife Elena, and that's probably another podcast. But I'm on my way to 70 years old. 1975. I graduated in 1974. 1975, I got my very first coaching job with my volunteer at a rec youth 12-year-old and under basketball. My uncle and I got involved in it. It was really fun. We ended up getting our team shirts, or excuse me, jackets, like the windbreakers back in the old days. You had the windbreakers, okay? Back in the 70s was the windbreaker was good with the nicks on the back, and it was white with green lettering, and I got hooked. And I've been coaching off and on ever since, or I've been involved with youth sports since 1974, 75. But how I got to be Coach Chuck is I lettered in 5 sports in high school. I don't want to get ahead of myself because they'll probably ask me, during this interview or this podcast, more questions. But
Absolutely.
I got into sports. Sports kept me out of trouble. And I lettered in 5 sports in high school: football, track, water polo, wrestling, and swimming. In my sophomore year, I was even in the band,
Hmm.
just to get active. And again, it kept me off the streets. It kept me out of trouble. But I had some amazing coaches in the 3 years that I was in all those sports. Amazing. Not just amazing coaches, but amazing teachers, counselors, administration. And when I got out, like I said, 1975, I graduated in 74, 75. I started coaching, and I've been that ever since. And good coaches coach X's and O's. Great coaches coach life. And
Hmm.
I'm not certified. I am a life coach,
Perfect.
certified in God's name to reach out to those and help them understand this game of life, because life is a game and we just have to learn how to play it.
And it can be very tough. And for some of us, we have had tough starts, such as you. I'm going to say hi to some of these subscribers that have come in, and then we're going to get started. Okay. All right, Miriam Bimler, thank you for coming in. Tracy with TNT Adventures, thank you. Paul, PSV Odyssey, I'm so glad you're here. He is cooking and listening. Ash and Embers, good to see you. Always good to see everybody here. Thank you for being here. Tracy, thank you for being a moderator. I really appreciate it. Pooch was having a little bit of an issue at first, but I think he's got it back under control. So I appreciate my mods. Hello, Melinda Dobson. She ran out of tissues, but she ran and grabbed her half roll of toilet paper. You're probably going to need it, Melinda. Oh, my goodness. Thank you for coming in. And don't forget, if you have a platform that you can share this on, boy, we'd appreciate it. We certainly would. You never know who's going to need to hear this story. Christy Betts, thank you for being here as well. And Ashen Ember says, Bandy here too. Christy Betts. All right. All right. So Ashen Ember says, Amen. No better name to be certified in Charles than in Christ. So very good. All right, Charles, well, we're going to get started. I want to talk to you and ask you a little bit about your childhood, your parents, and how you grew up, because in the description, a lot of people have sort of made their way here because they noticed that a part of the description was talking about a 3-year-old being beaten, and also after that moving into your own type of addiction or abuse. And so let's talk about first as a child. Tell us about your childhood.
Well, I do want to start with this. I had told Tish earlier before we started is that it's difficult to go back. It's difficult, and I'm already starting to well up because I'm ready. I'm ready to give up the realness of what happened to me in my life and how it changed. So in the next this one and part two, you'll get an idea of I came out of the mine. I came out of the darkness where it was dark, it was cold, there was no light. I was so deep, I was embedded into the walls, and I liked it because I was protected and I protected myself. That's that defensive, that rock around that diamond. Okay, let's just look at it in that way. And I liked it. I would not let nothing in based on the environment that I lived in. So it's very difficult to come out. So I'm talking to those that are watching, okay, and listening. Thank you so much for coming on, because this is very much needed. So,
and I thank you, Charles, for
I got mine.
And Charles, and I'm sorry, I apologize. I forgot to share that because Charles did share before we came on. We discussed that it is a mindset once and if you've been abused or beaten or addicted or witnessed any kind of abuse, violence, domestic violence, alcoholism, whatever it is, that if you grew up that way, it is very hard to dive back into that mindset. But Charles has prepared for this. And boy, that's why I ask so much of anyone that has a platform to please share, because I believe that while we are called to do and share our testimonies so that others will know that they're not alone, and also know that God is real and he is good, it is also a bit of a sacrifice, I'm going to say, because the reason I say that is because even writing a chapter in a book, you have to dive back into that dark place. And it's hard. It's hard. It is hard. So thank you so much, Charles, for doing this for us. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your childhood and your parents.
Okay, so I can go back I can go back pretty far. Adding on to that, I do have PTSD. I've learned how to control it. I have from 13 years of, and we'll get into that, but 13 years of ugly. So I do have PTSD. I have a lot of people ask me all the time, were you in the military? No. What about EMT? No. What about a police officer? No. Well, how do you know that you had or you have PTSD? Trauma. 13 years of trauma. So I go back as far as I can remember. My mother and my stepdad, my mother and my father separated and got a divorce when I was, I don't know, a little over 2. And my father took my blood sister, and my mother took me, split us. And my stepfather was a hardworking man. And I think around 3 is when we were actually locked in, if I can remember right. So I was living in an environment with a very abusive stepfather, and my mother was also abused. And she was one of those ladies, one of those women that were stuck in the domestic cycle, the domestic box. So as a child, we had our good times. But because of the alcoholism, and because my stepdad was very abusive, obviously we had issues, whether it was my mother or whether it was me. So at 3 years old is when my story of my journey began in my brain and in my heart. So not with my mother and my father, separated, split up at a very early age, and then put into an environment with a very abusive stepfather.
I'm going to ask you this question. So your sister, she was your biological sister?
Yes, the only one.
Okay, only biological sister. And I don't know if you can remember. I mean, there's a lot of my childhood that I don't remember at all, but maybe now you could tell me how did that feel to be? I mean, did you want to go with your mom? And how did it make you feel to be separated from your sister?
Well, see, this is where we get deep, because some people ask me all the time when I tell my story, how do you remember? You say you were 3 years old. How do you remember? You do remember, because the PTSD will always remind you, and it might be foggy, but it still reminds you of the environment that you lived in. So I don't really know how I felt, other than going along with, okay, well, my father's not around. See, my father never saw his father. So that's another thing. And I'm glad that you brought up traits, because we're going to talk about traits. We're going to talk about generational cycles of negativity passed down from generation to generation to generation until they're broke, if they're ever broke. And those traits are real. So I really can't tell you. I don't really remember that. I just remember some good and a lot of ugly from that time period.
And so you specifically remember, and already the comments have started. Thank you guys for sharing. People saying that they have PTSD too, but for a lot of different reasons. It's a terrible box to feel stuck in. Someone else said that their memories begin at 3 years old as well. So thank you guys for coming in and listening. And so you specifically remember, I'm just going to go into it. You specifically remember a beating that you got. And thank you, Ashes and Embers. They too said, I remember it just being dark and being alone. And then one day it was still dark, but I was no longer alone. So tell us about this beating. Why? Do you remember why? Do you just remember the beating? And then what took place after that?
I remember because the dreams have never stopped. The nightmares, I'm almost 70 years old. The nightmares have never stopped. I've learned how to control them. When I have a nightmare now, I wake up. I change the channel. I don't like what I'm watching. I wake up, I open my eyes, and I don't go back. It might come again, but not at the same time. I get up, I open my eyes for a minute or so, I change the channel, I go back to sleep. So the dreams are still locked in. They're locked in here and they're locked in here. That's kind of sort of where that fog will always be there, but you still remember. So my mother was a waitress. This was probably back 1950, 1958, 1959. I was born in 55. My mother was a waitress and she worked the night shift. We lived in a second story building in the back. So there was a apartment, place up in front, a house up in front, and then we lived in the back, 2-story. We lived upstairs. Grandmother lived underneath. One of 3 grandmothers lived underneath. And my mother went to work, as she always does, in the evening time, and I was left with my stepdad. Well, I was 3 years old, around 3, somewhere in that area, and I was into the training pants thing, changing the diaper, the training pants from the daytime into the nighttime with the diaper. And my stepdad was changing me, and he asked me if I had to go to the bathroom. That's the potty training. I said no. He started putting the diaper on me, and I accidentally peed on him. That's what sometimes that happens, especially with little boys. Okay, they have a tendency to have accidents. So I accidentally peed on him, and that triggered my stepdad, and he pulled out the belt, and he started. And sometimes it wasn't the belt, sometimes it was the buckle, sometimes it was whatever he could get his hands on. This particular time was his belt, and he grabbed me. I'm ready to run. I'm gone. I'm trying to get out of here as I'm yelling and screaming. And he was just grabbing whatever limb he could, and then beating me, hitting me with the belt and the buckle, whatever. There was no in betweens. When my stepdad went off on me, there was no in betweens. It was all or nothing. And the screams woke my grandmother up. My grandmother called the cops. I remember this as if it was right now. Constantly plays in my brain. The cops came. They knocked. It was Long Beach, California, so they were dressed in black. They knocked on the door. He opened the door. Obviously, they asked what was going on. There was complaint about yelling and screaming, and a child yelling and screaming, and I was gone. I had found a safe place. Once he got let me go and he had to do something else, I went to my safe place. I was under some blankets, hiding under some blankets. And the police officer found me, and he pulled the blankets over, and he started crying. I was beaten. I was severely beaten. Bad. And he started crying. Next thing I know, they're wrapping me up in the blanket. They're handcuffing my stepdad. They're escorting him out the door. And just about that time, my mother had come home, ran up the stairs, came into the apartment, saw what was going on, and first of all said, "No, don't take him. What happened?" And they're taking him. And then, where am I? Well, not only did they take my stepdad, they took me in the blanket, and they put me into child protective custody. My mother tried to yelling and screaming. So all this whole thing was happening to this little boy. The cops, the yelling, the screaming, the energy. And they took me, and she tried to ask if she could not keep me. And they basically said, no, this is not a safe environment for this young man, and we're taking him, and they put me in child protective custody. That was that night.
So too much for a 3-year-old, for any child, especially a little, to witness, to endure, and definitely not at your own fault. I mean, that was no fault. You did what every normal little boy, and for whatever reason, triggered him.
It was a trigger. We'll use that word because if anybody's watching that understands traits and triggers that bring those traits out, that magnify the energy, the anxiety, whatever it might be, it's a trigger. My PTSD is triggered at times on certain things. I've learned to control it. So the trigger triggered my stepdad, and he beat me. Matter of fact, it was so bad. Let me add to this. It was so bad that I was in the records from 3 years old in Long Beach Courthouse or Long Beach Hall of Records, police records, whatever. I was in there, pictures, the belt, everything from 3 until 18 when it got expunged. But I was in the records of, if they were to look up Charles Prinzen Jr., and they open it up, you would see the pictures of me with all the bruises and I don't know, I can't say blood, but it was bad. I was beaten from head to toe because again, whatever he grabbed, he hit what he didn't grab, and I was still trying to get away. So whether it was my head, my arm, so everything else, or my leg upside down, he was giving it to me.
And so, was that a regular punishment, beatings like that, or was that the first time you were beaten like that? Someone just asked us, were you smacked without warning, like a freight train, or?
So this is what I do remember. I don't remember anything prior to that. I have no memory prior to that, but that is a very, very strong memory when I go back into that mind, when I go back into that mindset of what happened. And then after that, there was, and we'll get into that, but I'll just put it this way. After that, 13 years from 3 until 16 beatings, whether it was peach branches, whatever, breaking brooms over me in pieces, navy brooms, whatever he could get his hands on. The peach branches were the worst. I had to go pick my own peach branch and peel the leaves off and give it to him so he could, and then take my shirt off so he could let me have it. So he wasn't one that, it was always something, whether it was an extension cord, whether it was a belt, whether it was a peach branch, whether it was a broom, anything he could get his hands on. When he got triggered to beat me, he beat me. So I tell people all the time, and I laugh about it now, that there's nothing that has not been on my body. Nothing.
Someone just asked, did he ever hit your mother? And they are sorry to ask you this question if you haven't already been through enough, but he's here to share it all. So let me keep us on track. So you are removed from the home and you go into Child Protective Services. What happens next? How do you get back home if you've been beaten for 13 more years? Anyway, so what happens next?
To answer that question, and to be continued to answer that question, my mother was a victim of domestic violence at the highest level. The highest level. We'll get into that as we go. I was put into the safe house, and I remember it well. You got the negative trauma, but you got the positive love behind it. So I was taken away by youth services and put into the safe house. And it was a backyard, green grass, sliding glass door. Cal was incarcerated for 6 months. I was in that safe house for 6 months. Okay. While they, meaning my mother and my stepdad, proved to the state of California that they were fit parents, and then they ended up giving me back. Okay. But while I was there, there's one particular day, I go in the backyard. It's a beautiful sunny day, green grass, fenced in yard. I feel safe. I'm not being beaten anymore. I'm actually being treated fairly. I don't remember my people that took care of me. I really don't. I just remember this. So I go into the backyard and there's a swing set. And I get on the swing set and I start going back and forth and I'm holding on to the chain and I'm doing pretty good. And I look up, and as I look up, I said, I know you're up there, God, because they taught me this in Sunday school. I did go to Sunday school. Jesus loves me. Yes, I know. For the Bible tells me so. So if you're listening to me, God, do me a favor. Let me get old. And if you let me get old, I promise I'll make it right. And that is something that I will remember until I get to see him again, or I get to see him. Okay. And then after that, whatever happened for that time period where they were going to counseling and they proved to the state of California that they were fit parents again, I was given back and put back into that home.
Okay.
What happened after that? I'm sure that people are now wanting to know, well, okay, well, what happened? You get back, but it was, so here I am. I'm kind of sort of ad-libbing, but I still know what happened. So here I am saying, okay, well, I'm leaving this, but they're telling me everything's going to be all right. These people that have taken care of me, that have shared their home with me, that have loved me and given me positivity, okay, told me it's going to be okay. The counselors and all the people that were involved in all this told me it was going to be okay. Family members, grandparents told me it's going to be okay because they thought it was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they put me back in the home and it was okay for a while. And then it started again. And again, not just me. At 5 years old, I saw my mother stabbed with a steak knife for the very first time. And the blood was actually coming out of her stomach, and her shirt was she had a pink shirt on, and it was getting all bloody. And my stepdad was drunk, as always, and want to know why she was crying. And obviously we're crying and screaming and yelling now, because at that time I had 2 step brothers and sisters that were living with us at the time. So we're going off, and he's trying to figure out what's the problem here. That's the problem with an alcoholic, domestic violent, child abusive at the highest level man. Okay, they get triggered, they do what they do, it's done. Now, what's the problem? So yeah.
But as children, we don't. Well, I'll speak for myself. Being raised by an abusive alcoholic, whom I love dearly, but as a child, I didn't know my dad's being triggered because he was raised that way. I just was beaten for sometimes just entering the room at the wrong time, And so as a child, that does leave a lot of trauma scars, and it is a lot of PTSD, a lot of things that you have to unlearn. But so you're moved back into the home because as a child, by the people that are caring for you, keeping you safe, they're telling you it's okay. It's going to be okay now. And your family is telling you it's going to be okay. The state is like, it's going to be okay. Your parents have taken these classes, courses, whatnot. It's going to be okay. You get back, it's okay for a little bit, and then it's not.
Right.
And I guess when you guys witnessed all of the beatings and the abuse and you're screaming, and I mean, your stepdad being an alcoholic, like a lot of alcoholics want to know why are you guys screaming? What's the big deal? Or even the next day, no idea what they have done and don't really care. But you tell me a little bit about how you continue to grow up in that home and continue to be abused. Tell us about that.
Well, let's just say this. Sometimes not just alcoholism or drugs or traits that have been passed down to them, that's all they know. And we'll get into that later also. Narcissistic men.
Oh, yes.
Narcissism. Okay. Same thing. They might not, but the adrenaline and everything gets going, and same thing. Their mindset is not there. They can't relate to what they're doing because that's what they're doing and that's all they know.
Right.
Okay. So, my life, my stepdad almost killed me twice. Once I was in the bathroom in the old porcelain tub with the silver thing and up on the top, and then the plug, okay, and then the water, and I fill the water up to just where the thing is, and if you move in an old tub, it went into that hole and it made noise.
Right.
So I'm in the bathtub and I'm just chilling, enjoying the warm water and all that. And my stepdad heard the noise and came in to check on me. I think I was 7. And he got triggered. Sometimes just looking at him the wrong way would trigger him. And he submerged me. And I remember looking up through the water. I can remember this as if I'm talking to you right now. I remember looking up through the water, all foggy and watery and stuff, but you could still see images up on top. And I was being held down. And I remember a woman coming in. I actually thought it was my mother. It wasn't my mother. It was my auntie. I found out about 6-7 years back when I reunited with one of my aunties, which this one was. She actually stopped him from keeping me submerged. The second time was strangulation. He tried to strangle me because I triggered him and he went off. So the level of damage or the level of abuse, there was no level. There was none, whether it was me or my mother. And so I just remember through the course of the 13 years, certain times. But here's the thing. Along with that becomes the broken home, the instability of living in that environment, because there was times that my mother would leave. We would go on welfare. She would come back. We'd go through another session. She would leave. We'd go to a grandma's house. She would come back. Okay. That's why by the time I hit my sophomore year in high school, I had attended my 28th school, 18 elementaries, 9 juniors, because we moved out a lot and came back. But she always came back. Why? Because my mother was also alcoholic. My mother also was suicidal based on the environment that she lived in. There was many negative things that my mother had to deal with, but one of the biggest was we would leave and come back, leave and come back, leave and come back. We always came back. Sometimes it'd be for a couple of weeks. One time it was for 6 months. She met a guy. He took good care of us. I mean, he gave her everything. We had a pool. We had furniture. I had my own bedroom. I didn't have to get my clothes from the lost and found. You know, I have to go into the lost and found and get clothes out so I would have clothes, or wear the same jeans that had been split down the middle and I put safety pins in to keep them going so I'd have clothes to wear. He took care of us. She left him. and went back to Cal. I think I was 11 at that time. So through the course of those 13 years, from 3 to 16, my stepdad was very abusive. Again, one time my cousin and I were playing in the backyard. I was swinging her. I accidentally pushed her too hard. She fell out of the swing. This is what's hard. She fell out of the swing. She started crying. We were 8. She was 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. The very first thing she thought about doing was running to the house and yelling for Uncle Calvin. My stepdad's name was Calvin Smith. Calvin Norris Smith. And she's yelling for Uncle Calvin. Uncle Calvin comes out, sees that his niece is screaming and crying, "Chucky, push me out of the swing." Bam, trigger. That was a Navy broom that is not your average broom. A Navy broom, if anybody knows, is about that thick. I think he broke that on over my body like 3 times. While my cousin watched. Here's the sad part. My cousin and I lost communication. She went on her journey. I went on mine. About 20-something, 30 years later, we meet at another cousin's house, and we're having a good time. And I'm just sharing. And I said, "Do you remember the time?" Because to me, it's funny. Okay, now my mindset is totally different now. And I said, "Do you remember the time that I accidentally pushed you out of the swing and you called for Uncle Calvin?" My cousin started crying. And she goes, "Yeah, I remember." She was so into it. She got into the. Now, when you're doing that, you hit rock bottom as far as your emotions. And she was doing it. I'm so sorry. You know what? My response is, "Don't be sorry, cousin." She was like a sister to me. We grew up together. When the parents would take off and leave for days, okay, abandonment, and go drinking, went on their benches for days. I remember one time I was in the 7th grade. They dropped me off at my grandmother's house, and I thought it was going to be cool for like the week. Okay, hey, they're going to be gone for the weekend. They might be gone for 3 or 4 days. Cool. I'm not getting beat.
Right.
I went to Hawaii for 2 years and left me with a grandma. Didn't say a word to me. That's abandonment. They went to Hawaii for 2 years and lived in Hawaii for 2 years while I lived with my grandmother, one of my 3 grandmothers. So my cousin, we took care of each other. There was 3 of us. Whenever the sister of my stepfather, which is Aunt Ginger, and they would all go and do whatever they would do, we had to stay together. We took care of each other. We cooked for each other. We took care of each other while they were gone. So we were like brothers and sisters. So for her, 30 years later, to go into and that was emotional. But I'm good with it because I've gotten over it. I told her, "Don't be sorry. That's who I am. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be who I am today. I'm still keeping my promise. I'm still here."
And so you mentioned a few things. That one is you had to, and I'm going back a little bit just because I was taking mental notes, but you had mentioned that you would have to go and get your clothes to wear out of the lost and found, or you would have to safety pin holes in your jeans to wear to school. Did your siblings, were they beaten as well? Or because it always seems like there's just one or
There you go.
2 that for whatever reason.
Bingo. You hit the nail on the head, or the hammer on the nail. My step brother and sister, which were my stepdad's kids, they had a mother and they lived with their mother, but they came and lived with us periodically. Okay. My sister was no longer in the picture. Later down the line, there was, but not. So I basically was the only child at home. There were times where my step brother and sister were there, but I would say 80% of the time I was by myself.
Mm. Did you ever, and I'm sure, I don't know, I say I'm sure, but I don't know, because I think as you're sharing this story and I see people's comments that it takes some of us back to our childhood as well. That I think sometimes as children, we think, why? What did I do? Or you try to be a perfect child, and there's no way to be a perfect child because you accidentally pee on somebody. There's a trigger. You accidentally, you're swinging your cousin, your family. They accidentally swing too hard and they fall out and they run in and do what a normal kid does. I'm going to go tell,
Mhm.
because you don't expect to get, or I guess most children or some children don't expect that type of discipline or reaction from it was an accident. I didn't mean to. So can you remember ever wondering, gosh, what did I do? I mean, maybe even growing up, what did I do so wrong? What is wrong with me? Did you ever think that, Charles?
Your self-esteem, your self-respect, your self-worth, your being
Mhm,
is again, you're in that mind to where you're in protective mode.
mhm,
Nothing gets in. You take it in. I took the beatings. Obviously, I yelled and I screamed. Okay. The hardest part about some of those is that they would go drink and he would tell me I would get in trouble. He would tell me uh, that I was going to get disciplined, but they would go to the bar for 5 or 6 hours. And then when they came back and he was really, really drunk, then I'd get the beating. That was prolonged. So
mm,
mentally, a lot of this stuff, and then because you don't know why. Why? No, I mean, I'm not going to say that I didn't do things that I deserved. I don't know about the beatings, but I'm not going to say as a kid I didn't do things. It's like we're kids.
right.
Okay, I remember at about 5 or 6, I remember playing mommy and daddy with my stepbrother and sister. We were outside and I picked up a cigarette butt that I found on the ground. And I'm going, look at me. They had those candy cigarettes back then where the powder would come out if you would blow, right? So
Right.
I'm like, look at me. And then I heard those dreaded words, Charles Gary. Those were the words of something's going to go down. Well, I went in there and he asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm playing. He said, I saw you with a cigarette. I said, I'm playing mommy and daddy. I'm playing mommy and daddy. I'm playing the environment that I'm living in. He smoked Lucky Strikes, non-filters. He fired one up. And any time that I did not take an inhale and actually and cough, I got the belt buckle. So again, your self-esteem, your self-respect, your self-worth is all gone. There's nothing there. He's taken everything away from you. You're existing on a day or hour to hour basis based on when is the next trigger, when is the next beating coming. And again, it wasn't just me. So if it wasn't me, then my mom was getting it. I don't want to rush to it, but I'm gonna say it while I'm on my mom. God bless my mom. My mom passed away on Mother's Day, 1979,
Mm.
at 44 years old, 1 month away from her 45th birthday on Mother's Day. Her body finally gave out from 22 years of that man. She kept going back. She was
My
sick.
goodness. Um, okay, so we have a couple of comments. Coach Chuck, someone says it's always someone else's fault with an alcoholic. Someone else said, same here, Tish. It was almost like holding your breath until you knew what you were in for, stepping in. Then depending on that, you prepare. Absolutely. When you walk in and you get a beating because you walked in the room and it's like, I didn't know, I wasn't supposed to. Melinda Dobson says, wow, you know what they would do nowadays to parents for child abandonment. Another, Melinda says, yes, Tish, I had a physical ailment and I got beat for it and also made to sit and suffer because of a physical ailment. They got beat for it. Yes. And if he was triggered while we were out in public, he had this specific look he would give. And the rest of the time was just sitting and wondering what he was going to do when we got home.
The weight.
It is the weight. The weight
The weight.
is mentally, emotionally abuse.
Not good.
Not good. So you went to 28 different schools, and you lived at home, obviously, all through that time. Did you ever leave? Did you ever think about running away, or why not leave? Why not get out of there?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, so we can move into, okay, because I think we might have to do another one. Matter of fact, we might even, I think we have one planned to get through the ugly, and then we get to the where I am today.
Right.
At 16 years old, I was in high school. I was in swimming, water polo, swimming. I was starting to yoke up a little bit. And I had a friend of mine over. My mother and my stepdad had gone on a binge for, I think it was 3 or 4 days. I had gotten in trouble and my stepdad told me that I was restricted. Okay. Well, they're gone. They're on their binge. They're doing whatever they're doing. And I had a friend of mine come over and to spend the night with me. I didn't know they were going to come home, and they come home. So we're out in the front yard, very small front yard, and we're playing stickball with the sock. Roll the sock up into the ball, and you get the broom or whatever, and you're playing stickball. And Cal comes in, and he asked me what I was doing. I said, well, I'm playing in the yard. He said, I thought I told you were restricted. I said, you told me I couldn't leave the house. Well, technically, I was out of the house, but I was in my little tiny yard.
Mm-hmm.
So that was okay to me, even more so when nobody's around to instruct me exactly what they want me to do. Go get in the corner, go stand in the corner, whatever. And he said, get in the house. Now my friend is with me. So I go in the house and I know what's going to happen. I'm 16 years old now. I'm a sophomore in high school. I know what's going to happen. And I had had enough. That was 13 years. So I go into the kitchen, and it's a very large kitchen, and I go to the back door because I'm looking for an escape route. And my stepdad comes at me. Well, I was taking martial arts. I was taking a form of street fighting kung fu. So I was able to fend some off because he came at me throwing punches, fend some off, and got by him. And I ran out the front door, and my best friend ran with me, and I never went back.
Mm.
Now, you're going to ask me where I went. I have a mentor. I had a mentor. She was older than me. And I used to go there. She actually ended up marrying my best friend's brother, which is also my best friend. They ended up getting married. And they were married 26 years until she passed away, a battle of cancer. But she was my mentor. So I would go there and I would spill my gut out because it was a free zone.
Right.
Okay. Hey, tag. No, I'm in the free zone. You can't do anything. I'm in the free zone. So I would go there and until I had to go back home. I didn't really spend the night, but I would stay till late, and then I would go home, and then the next day would come up and whatever. My parents weren't there, but she listened to me. I got to come out of that cave and feel comfortable to talk to somebody. She was my mentor. She was my best friend. Well, I never went back. I left my mother there. I left the environment. I went to this safe house where my mentor was. And her mother, which is a widowed Japanese lady with 2 daughters, legally adopted me.
Oh my gosh.
I
Wow.
have a tattoo right here. I'll show you. It's all faded. I have a tattoo right there that says Mama Son. I got that when I was 17 years old because I wanted to make her a part of me for the rest of my life because she was so good to me. So now
Well,
I transitioned from ugly to a safe house. I have my own room. I have a sliding glass door where I can go into the backyard. I came and went as I wanted. It was different.
Mm.
And it was different in a lot of different ways because now I'm starting to feel the positivity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to feel she made my breakfast in the morning. She made me a bagged lunch every day. 2 sandwiches, onion roll with ham and cheese and lettuce and tomatoes. And I could only eat one. I would sell the other one. Bobby was on Monday, Mike was on Tuesday, Stevie was on Wednesday. And she knew it, but she did it anyhow. So she'd get up, make my breakfast, orange juice, hash browns, eggs, toast every morning. Make my lunch, and then a fine dinner. And then I was legally adopted into a Japanese cultured family.
Let me ask you this. This might be a hard question. I don't know. But was that the first time you ever felt truly loved,
No,
Charles?
no. There was many times we would be camping, we'd be on a beach, we would be in a store. But I remember this one time very, very, very strongly. We were camping in Southern California at a beach for the weekend, and my stepdad laid into me. And somebody campsite next to me saw, and they wanted to steal me. They even told me they wanted to steal me. So I had people along my journey that saw where I was and the environment that I lived in that wanted to change it.
Mm-hmm.
But in most cases, they couldn't.
Right.
Because they couldn't. But they did show me the feeling of wanting to give me love.
Mm-hmm.
So back to my foster home, I was shown love. I was shown love by my sister, by my younger sister, by my Japanese family, by my mama-san. But it was weird because all the time that I lived at home from 3 until 16, we would be told, my mother and I would be told, I love you by my stepdad. I love you. But that was usually after a beating.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you relate love to a beating?
Right.
So here I am in my foster home now. My mom legally adopted me as a widowed Japanese with 2 daughters, and the money that she got from the state, she bought me new clothes every other week. You get paid on the 1st, you get paid on the 15th. I had Wallablies, I had Kennington shirts, I had Levi's, I had my own room. I was good. I was going to school. I was in sports. I was happy, but I still had issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I still had, and I did things, you know, I smoked, I drank, I did things that a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid back in those days did.
Of course.
The bonfires or whatever. But my mom and my family accepted me, and they changed my life. They gave me something that I always wanted, but it was still, it was different.
Mm-hmm.
But it sure was cool.
And so during that time when you were adopted, did you see your mom and your stepdad, your
I
siblings?
did.
And what about your sisters, your sisters that you were adopted into the family? Do you have contact with anyone there?
Well, my oldest sister Sharon, my mentor, she passed away 11 years ago. My mother passed away. She passed away in December. My mom passed away in February. I guess that was the straw that broke camel's back. She was in a senior citizen home for a few years, and so she passed away about 11 years ago. My younger sister is still living in the house that mom had, and we really don't see each other. We don't really. I do talk to my nieces and my nephews, text or Facebook. That's a good thing about social media. You get to keep in contact with, and they call me Uncle Chuck. That's my foster sister and best friend's children that are my nieces and nephews. So I did go back. I got invited to barbecues or, my stepdad, let me say this. That's all my stepdad knew.
Right.
Because that's how he was treated. That's the trait. And I have forgiven my stepdad because that's all he knew. So yes, I did go back, and there was times, and I remember one time that I went over there and he was drunk. This is I do this in school when I actually do presentations. He was really drunk. My mom was cooking, and I went to visit. They invited me to a barbecue. I still said yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I still, he taught me respect. He taught me how to be mannerly. He just showed it the wrong way. But I was raised well in mannerism. And so I went there and he was barbecuing and he said, "Hey man," he said, "I heard drunk. I hear you've been taking martial arts and you're pretty good. Let me see you drunk." And I looked at him, I said, "Dad, I can't. The type of self-defense that I'm taking, street fighting, we don't play. It's like live, right?" A couple minutes went by and he said, "Oh," he said, "I hear you're pretty good. Let's." I go into the house to visit my mom for a little bit because I wanted to get away from this knucklehead. And when I came back, I couldn't find him. And he was nowhere. And I turned around, all of a sudden I had these fists coming at me and I blocked and I got him. Maybe that was that child of all those years in abuse that could finally defend himself. And I did what I told him he didn't want me to do. And I hit him in the chest, and he was like the Matrix, flying in the air, slow motion, until he hit his butt, he hit his back, he hit his head, and his dentures came out. True story. True story. And now I hit him so hard in the solar flex, right where I was taught to hit, and he's sucking for air. And I wanted so bad. I'm being honest. I wanted so bad to tell him, "You and I didn't. I remember picking up his dentures. I remember washing them off, and I went to give them to him, and I went, no, because he was still going. He was still sucking for air, and I thought for sure he'd suck those things down, and I'd end up killing him, and then I'm going to go to jail, right? And that was another thought. Another thought is I did. There was many times that I wanted to take care of my stepdad, but then, like my foster mom said, then who wins? And I told her many times, I don't care. My foster mom, I told her I'm going to go over there and take care of it. And so after that happened, I found out that he had cut my mother. He was a merchant marine, so he went to the Philippines. He went all over. I found out about a week later he had cut my mom's leg with one of the swords that he had gotten from the left side of her kneecap all the way to the right side of her kneecap, and there was something like 90 stitches to put her back together. I found out about that. That was after the thing. I'm done. I'm gonna excuse my Ron. I'm gonna whip his ass. I'm done because I know I can now. Okay, I know I can. And I went over there and I opened the front door, and he was sitting on the couch and on the coffee table, because back in those days everybody had a coffee table.
Right.
Okay, and on the coffee table was his sword, was a hatchet, was a hammer, and was a butcher knife. He was waiting for me. And I looked at him and I started laughing. True story. I started laughing. And at that time, I was done. I had had enough. I had enough with my mother. I had enough with that environment. He wasn't worth my time. And I ended up going back home to my foster home.
And so you didn't retaliate or take anything out. Thank God.
No.
And so you go back to your foster home and life is good.
Life is good.
Good. And you continue to do all the things that you do in high school, and then you graduate from high school, and then you move into what?
My own place. Right out of high school, after high school, and my grandmother on my father's side managed some apartments over by a hospital, and a lot of the people that worked in the hospital rented the studios or the one bedroom, and I lived in the studio. Worked at McCoy's Markets as a box boy. And I had my own place. And that was like 1975. My mother passed away in 1979, May 14th, Mother's Day, May 13th, Mother's Day, from abuse. Her body just gave out. And I remember 1 year, I had met my mother. She wanted to see me. So I went with her. I went to meet her, and she was at a bar, and she was drunk, and she tried to get the bartender to give me a drink. Oh, it's this chocolate one. I don't want it. Well, what about that? I don't want it. She looked at the bartender. She said, make him this drink. And I looked at the bartender. I said, do not make that drink because I'm not going to do it. And I looked at my mother. My mother. I had a mom. I had a beautiful mom. I looked at my mother and I said, I'm done. I cut the line to my mother. Because my mother, I'd had enough of my mother doing what she done. She was no longer a mother in my eyes. At that age, I had enough. Mm-hmm. I was 19. And 1 year later, on Mother's Day, my mother passed away. It took about 8 hours for them to find me, somebody to call me, to get a hold of me, to tell me that my mother had passed away. I went to the hospital. I'll end on this is I tried to give my mom the best services that I could. 2 weeks after my mother passed away and my stepdad got the death certificate, he married a manager for one of the bars that they used to go to. 2 weeks after my mother passed away and he got the death certificate, he married a manager of a bar that they attended. Here's the good thing, is she was a Hawaiian and she beat him. But anyhow, let me finish with. Well,
okay. I want to ask you this. I want you to think about this so that when we start back up next Tuesday, guys, you got to tune back in next Tuesday.
We're gonna
Did you live with guilt after you were done with your mom, and then a year later you find out that she passes? And
I did not.
Okay, and when we come back next week, I want to know how you did that. And that way it helps someone else, because someone else might be thinking, damn, I should have went to see mom. We want to know how. We want to know how you maneuvered through that and how you managed to stay in your apartment. And then you also took on some of those traits, alcoholism, a little bit of domestic abuse.
Domestic violence and child abuse. We'll talk about that. I became domestic violent, and I became child abusive, and I was a user, whether it was marijuana or beer, and I used it a lot.
And you also tried to take your own life.
I have a few times in my life, yes. Now, my mother tried it many times, so I knew about it. My mother was one of those that were very suicidal, whether it was cutting her wrist or whether it was pills. I remember seeing her many times in the bathtub with her wrist cut. Mm. So, yeah.
Well, Charles, I thank you so much for sharing tonight. My goodness, so many people, so many comments, people that can relate. And so, like you said, it was needed, and there's proof of it in the comments for sure. And so I cannot wait until you come back next week and talk about how you moved into your adulthood and how you took on some of those traits, but also how you kept your promise that you made to God when you were 3 years old on that swing. We want to know how, and we want to know how you're doing that today. So without further ado, I just want to thank you so much for coming in. Thank you everyone for joining. And I see people saying they'll be here next week. They can't wait. Thank you so much, Charles. We appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.
Well, as we say in Iron, a hui ho kako, until we meet again. Aloha.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Guys. Thank you, Chuck. All right, everybody. That concludes this episode of No Judgment here with Tish Ross, the podcast. Stay tuned next Tuesday so we can find out more about how Charles continued to move forward, and how he managed his way to becoming domestic violent, to becoming child abusive, to becoming a little bit of an alcoholic or abused alcohol, and also how he also tried to end his life. But we also then move into where he is today, because boy, he's one positive man, and I want to know how he stays that way. So until next time, I'll see you guys next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on No Judgment here with Tish Ross, the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. You have a good night. Bye.